Good morning. We have just been having an interesting conversation about the budgets of Hollywood films and how they can be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And your initial question was, is that justified? Is that necessary? And my argument was absolutely. Basically, you're dealing with a group of people who have had to beg, borrow, and steal to try make the best of their art and to try create their visions with absolutely no budgets. And to be honest, it's about time that they had the ability to do so. I mean, these are costume designers. These are people who made Smeagol. You know, the fact that they wouldn't have been able to do that without the finances, without the creative freedom to be able to make beautiful things. And I think hundreds of millions of dollars are definitely worth making some beautiful stuff like Smeagol, basically.
That's a compelling argument. And I've seen some really, really good films that have cost X amount of millions to make. Funnily enough, I'm going to go all nerdy and quote, or rather bring up the subject of Star Wars.
Excellent.
When George Lucas made Star Wars, he had to do a lot of fighting to get it made in a certain way. He didn't have much of a budget. In fact, all the edits of the film were working around all that he had. There was no other takes or certain scenes that he could use. So I think it's really prudent to note that when he did have a lot of money, when he literally became the galactic empire of Lucasfilm, the prequels of all their CGI, all their massive budget, whether you like them critically or not is obviously subjective, but everyone knows the prequels, when it comes to their place in pop culture, aren't as highly regarded as the first three movies. And those first three movies, at least the first one, was done on a very, very small budget. So don't we get more creative when we have less material?
Yes, we do. Just because resourceful, I think would be a better word for it. But I also disagree with that. That should be the way of it. Not should. But the thing is that I've seen a lot of people put together some beautiful work with no budget in the theatre scene, and that's great. But the thing is that they have had to make compromises to their vision and to their sort of ideal result. And I think it's unfair that they can have a vision for a set or something like that and have to make it out of cardboard at the end of the day because they just don't have those resources. They're not being pushed creatively, and they're not being able to express themselves fully, and I think that's sad.
That is sad. It's strange. I feel on the one hand, I feel guilty that I live in a world where we spend how much money on the movie? It could be upward of 120 million dollars if we're going to talk about the American film industry, because that's where we're really pointing these questions at, right? And that's, including marketing as well. I just feel quite guilty that we have that as a system. And if possible, if there was some kind of restrictive budget on these films, I think that, you would have to make certain compromises in what's in your head, but I think the resourcefulness of the filmmakers would be tested to a point where we'd get really good films anyway. We'd just be taking a different route. Is that so bad?
To be honest, yeah. To be honest, I think the arts sector all over the world gets a hell of a lot of shit, really. They get pushed around, they get sort of squished into the corner, and the thing is that they have just as much a right to be able to express themselves and to be able to have the finances. I think it's sad that the expectation of artists is that they should struggle and that they should be poor, and that's where all the great work comes from, supposedly. But the thing is that people don't value entertainment. People don't believe that, just because you're an entertainer, you're not a scientist, you're not you're not making a difference in the world. And the thing is, everybody needs it, and so why should they have to struggle to be able to make people's lives a better place?
I think struggle is good. I think all fiction demands a protagonist and their secondary characters to go through shit, and that's reflective of the creators that bring them into existence. I don't think that I'm making an assault on the film industry. I do think that every now and again we do find ourselves in a situation where we need to tell a story, and I just don't understand how that amount of money in arguably the wrong hands is a good thing. Um, sure, there are the Peter Jacksons of the world, there are the Kevin Feige's of the world, there are the Steven Spielbergs of the world, but at the same time, I say that almost as a joke, because there is only one Steven Spielberg, there is only one Peter Jackson. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people, given that amount of money, won't necessarily spend it in the right way.
I think of the people that are given that kind of money and the amount of hard work in terms of budgeting and fundraising, they are only given that because the investors and the producers only believe that there's a profit to be made. I think the fact that, the quality of a film is subjective and totally dependent on the viewer's opinion. But the thing is that they didn't just be like, hey, we've got 150 million, let's just throw it to these people. There was a lot of hard work, debate, and Excel sheets and all that kind of shit to be able to make it happen. They believed it was a good thing, whether it was for the product or whether it was for the development of the technology for the product, which is also just as important. We look at Avatar, the fact that he came up with that movie a very long time ago and didn't make it purely because the fact that the technology wasn't there, and he spent decades developing that technology to make this beautiful film.
For every James Cameron, there is a M. Night Shyamalan. For every Peter Jackson, there is going to be a creator out there who will make something which is undeniably something that they're happy to get funded because they really want to do it, or they believe it will cynically make them a lot of money, but it doesn't necessarily go the way we want it to. And I'd just like to think that a proportion of that money could go towards charitable causes. I don't think Hollywood should have the blinkers on it and only have these causes being at the forefront of their vision when they're making a film about it, or some kind of documentary that purports to say, hey, we've got to look at these people. It shouldn't be in the minority.
Yeah, I mean, also the thing is that the power of film is the ability to speak and communicate to people on a mass level. You put a film out, and then you've got, you put out Superman, and then you've got, decades of people who are devoted and have opinions, and you know what I mean? It's incredibly powerful. And so not only are the people making films, they're actually speaking to individuals. So in terms of giving money to charity, or in terms of speaking to people in their own homes, is also incredibly powerful. So you could also argue that the making of those films and how they speak to people could also be incredibly beneficial.
Oh yes, I agree. Like, ultimately, I do know that we need stories to unify us. We need to feel that what we're going through is not some singular hell, or that we have gone through things that people don't understand. So books, films, music, all that counts. But I just get a bit irked. I'm a subscriber of AMC Movie Talk, which now just become Collider Movie Talk, and they continuously talk about films that are in the works and how much they're going to spend on those films, and a lot of the things that go on behind the scenes in regards to stars asking for a certain amount of money and getting it because they're important to that film, and if that film sinks and that star still has that kind of pulling power, it just makes me feel that because not enough people are actually talking about it, or not making it an issue or campaigning against it, that it's something that at some point should be looked at. That's all.
I think so.
I feel bad for theatre people having to use cardboard. I'm sorry, theatre people, but they're not in my line of fire if indeed I did have a weapon.
But I think my final opinion would be, I think the arts sector has had enough work cut out for it to be able to justify itself and for it to be able to get that kind of money. That money can be found in other industries that are being flushed down the toilet, as it were. So I think instead of taking money from an industry that has always struggled, and instead taking from other industries potentially that have that kind of sum, and then putting that to the causes that you were thinking of, might be an ideal way. But I don't think we have any right to pick on the arts.
Okay, theatre gets a free pass.
I'm talking about film as well.
Literature gets a free pass. Big Hollywood movies, they're the ones that I have a big issue with at the moment. Indie films don't have enough money being put into them. I'm a big fan of David Lynch. I love a lot of great films that, to an extent, have changed popular culture in a very subversive way. And even though he's not the independent filmmaker that we like to think of him as now, simply because he's made a certain a certain stake in my heart and other hearts. I feel there's other Lynches out there that should be given that kind of money so they can show us their interesting and maybe skewed perspective on life. They should be given some money. And I find that they will probably be passed over because they've got very niche stories to tell. And that's a shame because those niche stories need to be given a greater audience, because then it will give us a little bit more than the solitary action hero going through a set of corridors to find the bad guy and rescue a woman. So
valid point. But I mean, I think all the people that are working on those productions in Hollywood have had their fair share of indie films that they needed to make to get out there. And so the thing is that they're finally earning the cream that they've worked for. I mean, mostly I'm thinking about all the behind the scenes people. There are hundreds of people involved in the making of a movie, and everybody gets to learn and develop and to be able to expand their skills from that. And I think that they should have the financial freedom to be able to do that, to be able to make better films, to be able to make better work, so they can inspire more people and speak to them in their own homes. I liked that.
Are we still rolling?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I feel that trusting the people that make these decisions to fund them implicitly, just because of the amount of garbage we get, doesn't that irk you?
Well, you see, but also the role of a producer is incredibly important, because I mean, if a director had all the money, then they're not there for that purpose. They have their own purpose.
Sure.
A producer decides where all the money goes and how much goes in, and the thing is, I think it's very important to have that. They have their opinion, they have their stake, and yes, you can criticize that there's very few producers with that much money to be able to designate, and they might be biased in their own ways, but it is very important that those people have their input and have their say.
It's only very recently that I think Hollywood has become a bit more self-aware that we are tired of certain tropes and conventions, right? So you can see that. I mean, it wasn't a great film, but Lucy, starring Scarlett Johansson, was a superhero movie but had a female protagonist. It didn't make that much money, and Scarlett Johansson's career won't be damaged at all by it because she's obviously in the Avengers and whatnot. But if I feel that we're being hoodwinked into believing that these producers are trying to find really interesting things for us to watch, yet they're still regurgitating the same stuff. Should it be given that amount of money? I don't think so. I think there should be there is no governing body that stops them from spending from A to B what they're going to make.
But then again, then you have an issue with the audience, because they're only going to create something that is going to sell. Therefore, obviously, these big movies and these things, which I don't personally like, do make money, and so therefore the thing is that they're not there. Their job is not, the artistic integrity
their job
of
is
the
to make
world.
money.
Exactly. So then it turns around to the fact that, well, obviously that's what we want, in a nice generalized fashion.
It should be what we need rather than what we want.
Yeah, but who can dictate that?
The
other than
directors,
ourselves?
the script writers, and if they at some point coalesce with the producers on a certain monetary level, if their commerce value system starts to overtake their artistic one, then that in itself is something obviously we can't check, but we can see the results of it, i.e. the films that get greenlighted. There are enough people out there who are interested in very heartwarming, strange, out there narratives, and I feel that even though there's quite a choice if you search, there's not enough choice if you are if you're waiting for it to be presented to you, and that's quite sad,
But the thing is that entertainment in general is a luxury. It's something that is on top of our daily needs. And so when it boils down to it, luxuries are what we want and not necessarily what we need. And according to these people who make these films and the sort of standard cliche of it all, what we want is explosions and half-naked ladies and superheroes and all that kind of jazz. But I think with the fact that entertainment is a luxury, it's not a necessity, means that it's for the extravagant and the silly and all the over-the-topness, as opposed to watching something that's actually mentally nourishing. That's why I watch documentaries, mate.
The world is going through a lot of shit, and obviously we want to be distracted by it. So ultimately, yes, entertainment will be something that people will continually look to be distracted. Um, and maybe